Welcome to the Accounting Technology Lab, sponsored by CPA Practice Advisor, with your hosts, Randy Johnston and Brian Tankersley.
Welcome to the Accounting Technology Lab. Brian and I are very happy to talk to you about the recent AICPA Engage conference held in 2024. Now, this really went over the period of June 2 out through June 6 or 7. And, that week was really filled with lots of different items. Now, we have a separate podcast for you on the accounting leader Think Tank Symposium. If you haven't listened to that, you may do that because that's how Brian and I started our Sunday. But we also finished our Sunday by attending the Thought Leader event where Barry probably did his last hurrah, his last presentation as CEO of the AICPA. And he was asked questions by Eric Askerson that night and talked about lots of different things. You were lucky enough, Brian, to have a bit of an extended conversation with him. And of course, we've been watching that. But we started off the week with I thought, a very moving and insightful presentation done by Eric Weinenmeyer, who is a blind mountain climber. And he does all sorts of things, including whitewater rafting, blind, and so forth. But his idea is no limits. Now, for those of you who have attended our K2 events for a long time, the co-founder of his organization I've talked about, who was also a mountain climber who lost his legs and now has created artificial legs over at MIT. I mean, this guy is top bloody drawer to listen to. But you and I, after that, then there was a bit of a professional issues update with Dan Hood asking Barry Melancon and Carla McCall, the AICPA vice chair, various questions. And then you and I got a good chance to do tech update together. Many people know that I'll do tech update by myself, but you and I co-write a lot of that content. And, I thought you'd done a nice job leading with AI. So what were some of the key things that we talked about in Tech Update? And then we'll talk more about AICPA Engage.
Well, I think and I appreciate you letting me get on the big stage this time. It was nice of the Institute to accommodate that and to let us do that. I think we do better when I think all of us do better when we can kind of go back and forth and everything. And I think we did some of that during this event, and it was good. I talked quite a bit about AI, and I think the general thing with AI is that it's coming fast. We don't know how it's going to land. We don't know where it's going to land. It will change what we do, and the world will look differently in 5 to 10 years in ways we can't imagine. But that was the major thing I guess we had there. Subsequent to that, of course, we've had the Apple announcements on AI and their relationship with OpenAI, and I think just like I said, I think that it is going to change the way we work and the things we do in many ways, and it's not done yet. It's still early days.
Yeah. Well, of course, I took off then with quantum computing. And of course, we've done an episode on quantum computing. And I get the opportunity shortly to work with Michio Kaku, whose book I admire greatly. And I'm anxious to see that. But one of my conclusions in Tech Update, which is important for our listeners, is effective today, the day you're hearing this podcast, you no longer buy the same computer equipment that you do in the past. The new thing is neural processing units, or NPUs. And in the Intel world, those are named Core Ultra. You don't want to buy cores, and the old naming convention, i5, 7, 9s, those are all gone. You want Core Ultras, which have the neural processing units. The new AMD chips, not all of them have neural processing units, but you only want to buy NPUs. And of course, the Snapdragon X Elite will be shipping and is shipping June 18th with the Microsoft Copilot Microsoft Surface Copilot Plus unit, which will be the first Snapdragon
Plus. Yeah.
ARM
Yeah.
chip, thank you, for Windows environment. And of course, there's been new code to support that Prism that is working there. But again, friends, listen to this carefully. Never buy another laptop or desktop that doesn't have NPUs in it. And for the first time since 2016, where I've recommended buying dedicated GPUs, the integrated GPUs have become fast enough that they're probably okay. So you can buy chips that have integrated GPUs. So all of this techie geeky speak says we're now going to have processors that run AI, NPUs. We're going to have enough integrated graphic process units to do all the rest of the load. And the cost of these will be about the same as what you've been spending. You just need to buy the right stuff. So, that's what we did with Tech Update. And then, of course, we went on for other software topics. And again, as part of the Accounting Technology Lab, weekly, we try to bring you the breaking news, important pieces about various technologies. And we try to do that in a little more depth with you. So I don't know that there's other super radical things from Tech Update. The Wi-Fi 7, the Unify company in late May now has 4 shipping units instead of just one. The One Pro that they were shipping at $189 was a great buy, but they now have outdoor units and they have a higher density Pro Max unit. But all of these things are only $189 to $229 for Wi-Fi 7. I mean, that's pretty much a given.
I will say that one of the purchases I have to make this year is I have to replace my Sonic wall, and I'm probably going to go with the latest gen Ubiquiti Dream Machine, which is about $1,000. It does, and I'm going to probably replace some of my wireless access points with these Wi-Fi 7 devices, just because it absolutely makes sense. Now I've got to warn you on the Ubiquiti stuff. It's cool. It works great. If you're not an alpha geek and have never worked with Ubiquiti before, you want to get somebody that has to help you. Okay, because this is not, if you're not an IT technical person, the setup of it, you have to have a controller server. Fortunately, if you do the Ubiquiti Dream Machine, it has one of those controller servers built in, but that part of the setup is going to be like a foreign language to you if you've never worked with enterprise IT hardware. So as excited as I am about those tools, and I think you can figure it out if you're willing to put in the work, but you should not expect an out of the box experience that is the same as when you bought a Linksys, WRT 54G 10 years ago. You plugged it in and it just worked. Okay, because you have to do some configuration on these things.
Well, Brian and I had a couple of other things that we wanted to talk about. So that's tiny bit of tech there. But, on June 4th, Tuesday, a session on unlocking the future, navigating the accounting talent pipeline was given. And it involves Sue Coffey and Lexi Kessler and Okari Ramsey and Jennifer Wilson. Of course, there's been a project for about 18 months on the pipeline. And the talent pipeline issue is going to continue to be a problem. Some of the initial conclusions, but you can read this for yourself in the larger report, is that the CPA profession is generally underpaying talent, which is part of the reason they're having trouble attracting it. That the number of students entering the pipeline continues to be below what's needed to fill the jobs that are out there. Of course, we've had more retirements during the pandemic. Pandemic came along, a lot of people bailed at that point, but post-pandemic, a lot of the people that probably would have retired before the pandemic finally did exit. So we're seeing a pretty radical changing of the guard is really the key. And Brian, I think we saw the changing of the guard on the show floor as much as anywhere, because you and I both work the exhibit hall on Monday. And, I'm going to just set this all up by saying I have never seen so many efforts made to sell products. We had 2 full rooms, reported to be 330 vendors on the floor. I tried to make sure that I at least was aware of who all was there. But for example, one of the vendors that I was happy to find was a company called SAM, which has onshore outsourcing. So instead of offshore outsourcing, it's basically US based, but we saw all sorts of other things.
I love that show floor so much because I can get more done in a half day of walking aisles and having conversations and catching up with old friends than I can get done proactively reaching out and doing research from my home office. I mean, I get so much stuff fixed. What's great about that is that you run into somebody, you talk to them, they say, "Oh, well, I have problem XYZ." Well, let's go see Bill Cornfield and talk about, or let's go see Jeff Capek at ProStaff and talk about scheduling. And so it's so nice because everybody's there. Okay, now there was an appearance at the show floor. However, I felt like the whole event almost felt like a debutante ball for private equity, and you and I both remarked that the presence of private equity and the private equity conversations was amazing. You've been speaking at that conference for going on 40 years. I was on the committee for, I don't know, 9 years, and I've been at it for north of 10 years. And the thing that really struck me about the whole thing was, you and I were talking earlier, and you reminded me that when we went to the Starbucks inside the event, there's probably 20 tables there or so, and there were 20 different conversations with different PE people taking place. It was almost like the Starbucks was the funding date site. It was like we were having speed dating for funding with PE almost. It wasn't organized like that on a formal basis, but it was striking how many times you would look and you would see people meeting, and the PE people would be meeting with them. So I thought that was an interesting part of the whole event. We talked about the PE impact in the thought leader interchange event that happened on the Sunday before this in a previous podcast. But it was that the people were there and they were in force and they looked like they were ready to deal. I mean, I felt there's so many, you can always spot them too, because they always had on a sport coat and slacks where everybody else would have on just a shirt. And it was amazing how you would just see the uniform show up and you knew what was happening.
Hmm. That's kind of an interesting way to say it. My guesstimate, Brian, is there were around 50 PE representatives, and they were meeting with software companies and with firms trying to make deals. And just to give you a sense of this, recent reading that I've done says that PE has about $1 trillion in dry powder to make deals with. And the volume is, ticking up. And so it was really stunning how many people actually had back-to-back meetings about every half hour. So just picture that you've got, a 2, 3 day period with meetings every half hour, how many meetings that you can get done. And that's what we were watching unfold. Also, I just noticed that there were a variety of people around the periphery of the event. Not wild about that on these big events because, the organizers and sponsors create content in tracks, we're seeing the exhibit halls we're seeing and so forth. But I've been amazed how, as of late, people will book the same hotel, set up in the Starbucks, and do all sorts of meetings that have no tie to the event whatsoever. They're just there to sell their services.
Well, but I got to say the same thing I said about the show floor. You don't get that assembly of people to make deals and to solve problems very often. That's probably one of two or three events in the country that are like that. The upcoming Scaling New Heights put on by Woodard is another one like that, where you can get just about any kind of problem solved that you want, with vendors and with practitioners and other things. But I I love that event for that reason.
Yeah, understood. And we'll talk to you about scaling new heights in a future Accounting Technology Lab podcast because I'm betting we'll have insights from that as well. But it was interesting because, again, it's kind of deal making. And, that part of it, I hope advance the profession. The other thing that you and I were blessed with, and I'm just going to use that word, the number of accounting software vendors, let's just keep it more general because it wasn't just accounting, that showed us new generations of product that they were going to release over the summer or later in the year. They were showing us the prototypes. Now, those things are under non-disclosure, so we're not going to discuss them today. But I got to tell you, half a dozen things that we saw that were not in the market yet. And I'm just saying, that's really good stuff. That's really good advancement. And so I don't want you to think we're certainly not being negative Nellies here. This was overall a super positive event. I am so pleased that you and I were invited and that we've had the involvement in Engage all these years. Just to also give a number we have not laid out yet. Reportedly 4,000 attendees with about 1,000 supporting vendors and staff, maybe 1,200. But so about a 5,000 person event. Bookings were in the Aria Hotel and the MGM next to it and so forth. So it was a big event with a lot of coverage. And bottom line was quite worthwhile in my mind to be presenting and to be able to interact. There were also a good number of people that, I saw across the room and I just didn't get to talk to. I could have used twice the amount of time there just to interact. But boy, talk about worthwhile.
Yeah, the meeting I think about that was the most rewarding for me was probably the one where we got to see the folks from Quick Fee and the folks from Nula that had set up their integration together and were starting to, they were trying to figure out ways to work together in here. And I think that's the future of a lot of the independent software vendors in the industry, is that they've got to figure out ways to work together. And we've seen where Carbon is working with a lot of folks, and we've seen Less Accounting, and we've seen many other products in the marketplace that try to help solve this integration piece and this making things to be truly seamless. And I was very, very excited to see, again, Jamie and Jennifer had worked together, and it was very clear that they have the vision, and they are going to take that vision places, and I'm excited about it.
I'm glad you called that out because those two companies both have products that we've talked about in other accounting technology labs. The new announcement basically allows you to do an end-to-end engagement letter onboarding all the way out through payment receipt by using the combination platform. And of course, QuickFee has the advantage of funding technology in addition to buy now, pay later, and all sorts of other really, in my mind, critical features to payment transactions. And of course, Nula, with their engagement letter processing, has a very good overall process. So I'm looking at 3 or 4 end-to-end processes of engagement letter through payments that are well done. But this alliance shows a lot of promise. And of course, there's a great example. We finished that meeting and, we bump into, old friends from Thomson Reuters that, then wanted some help. And well, it's like Jennifer from QuickFee's right down here. Jennifer, yeah, but I haven't seen her in a long time. Let's wander you down there. And that, like you said, on the show floor, you get the ability to just make the introductions, get things to happen. And when somebody has a particular issue, it's like, here's who you go talk to. And by the way, they're over there in that booth. Just like at the Wolters Kluwer booth, we saw people that can make things happen inside their booth on the floor.
Absolutely.
And
there's people there that you'll see, like Candy Cross at Thomson, who has been at Thomson for 20 plus years, probably closer to 25. But has forgotten more about the inside baseball of how you get problems solved in that organization, and is willing to help people, and that's the most rewarding part of this, is that you have all these people that have been all spread across the world, beating their heads against the wall trying to figure out how to solve this problem. And it's so rewarding to be able to walk over and say, you two talk amongst yourselves, I give you a topic, integration, and they can work it out. And it's a it's I think it's one of the most important events to attend if you're doing what we do, or again doing consulting in the profession, just because the people that are there, you just that assembly of people and that ability to make things happen. I mean, if you're not scheduled 18 hours a day, you're not taking full advantage of it.
Yeah, so I hesitate to say how many new products that Brian and I discovered. I forced him to go back and look at a product that I'd found in the exhibit hall and said, "Look at this and look what it does. Look at this, look what it does."
Yeah.
And we will be covering those in future podcasts, I'm sure. We've got to vet them a little bit because in all of those cases, they were brand new. I've never seen, for example, the product out of the UK or the product out of San Diego or the product out of Sacramento. I hadn't seen any of those before. And it's like, I thought I was pretty clued up. And how did those people get under our radar?
Well, the thing I think that's happening too is that the VC and PE influx, where the PE folks are mandating the tech stacks and the PE folks are mandating the adoption of modern technologies. I think in many cases they're elevating products that are surfacing and are being created to have technology solve these problems. And these are not coming from the traditional vendors. So, people coming out of left field is much more normal than that. And it's another reason that's in my mind, one of the best conferences in the country.
Understood. Well,
and it's a close race between that one and then the one we're going to in a week or two.
yeah, understood, Brian. So that said, what other key things would you want our listeners to know about this year's AICPA Engage?
Well, like Randy said, Barry Melancon is retiring as the chair of the AICPA this year. That is huge. Barry Melancon is the AICPA, and so figuring out who the next CEO of AICPA is going to be there's going to be a lot of drama surrounding that. I expect you'll see some senior leaders turn over at AICPA, not necessarily because of anything, but again, if you're looking at this situation and you wanted the job and you don't get it, I could see how they might want to go do something different. I will say that one of the dinners I had the opportunity to attend, I was invited to one by Liz Farr and Rick Telberg and Seth Feinberg on disruptors, and had a very interesting conversation was able to sit next to a gentleman that buys and sells small CPA practices. And we had a number of people at the table, software vendors, the brokers, we had just all kinds of folks at the table, and we were able to have some very, very interesting conversations about what the future looks like, and about how we can take advantage of these things. It's nice to see these old friends, but it's just intellectually refreshing to be able to interact with them and to talk to them about these things, and see what's going on between their heads, and kind of take their temperature on where the profession is. I think you are going to see a significant amount of consolidation in the industry, and I think you're going to see a significant amount of private equity in there. However, when we talk to some of the folks that were actually involved in some of the transactions, it's very clear that some of the private equity folks have absolutely no clue with respect to how to run an accounting firm, based on the due diligence requests and other things like that. So I think we're going to have a rocky year or two here. And I'm very excited about where it's going, because I think we're going places that we should have gone should have gone 5, 10, 15 years ago. But I'm glad that we're finally going to get there. So I think we're going to have a very interesting couple of years, and change is clearly afoot.
Well, we have the clear opportunity to live in interesting times. And I'm glad that you're spending time with us in these interesting times. We'll talk to you again in another Accounting Technology Lab. Good day, all.
Thank you for sharing your time with us. We'll be back next Saturday with a new episode of the Technology Lab from CPA Practice Advisor. Have a great week.